Being your authentic self, trying to give each interviewer something different.
KJ Matthews is an Emmy award-winning broadcast journalist and producer. She's been a reporter or producer for CNN, CBS, ABC, Fox TV, internationally for BBC TV, Germany's DW English TV, and Australia's ABC TV network, as well as being instrumental in the creation of CNN's Oscars, Grammy Awards, and Golden Globes specials. As a producer, KJ has worked on major syndicated TV shows like Extra and Access Hollywood, and with all this experience, she's here to share some tips for actors, plus how to navigate that all-important red carpet interview. Welcome, KJ.
Be as succinct as you can, because I've had that really when I was starting back in the day where you'll ask an actor a question and they'll go on and on and on about something. And then you get the publicist saying, wrap it up, wrap it up, wrap it up, because you've got like 10 other people to interview as well. So the quicker, the better. I always find quick answers are much better.
KJ, thanks for coming on the show. It's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Darren.
So you've been around the world and you've interviewed so many A-list stars, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And this audience, most of our listeners will be actors. Out of everyone you've interviewed, what makes a good interviewee if you're the actor in the room for someone like you?
Being your authentic self, trying to give each interviewer something different. Because I think the biggest thing when it comes to actors is that you have a project or you have a movie or TV series that you're promoting. And so you have to do a lot of interviews. And so what happens is that you often are asked the same question over and over again about your character, about working with the characters on set, about why you chose this project, blah, blah, blah. And it gets old and it gets mundane. And so you can start to sound like you're a robot. And so you always want to remember, I think, as an actor, to try to give each interviewee something different.
How do you do that if the questions are the same? What's a good tip that you have for that?
You know, I would actually practice even before you go in there. You know, if the question is something like, you know, why did you choose this project, or what was it like to work with the certain other actors on set? Have about 3 or 4 answers, different answers before you even go in, because you know what the basic questions are going to be. They're always going to ask you about your character. They're always going to ask you about why you even auditioned for or chose this project. And they're always going to ask you about working with the actors on set. So you know that those are 3 big questions right away that you can come up with several different answers for before you even start the promotion for your project.
Do you ever find that if you're not the first one in on a day and you're maybe down the order a little bit, and can you tell the difference?
Or like the fatigue that sets in?
Yeah. You know, think of it. Actors are human. We all get tired. They're not robots. They're not superhuman beings. Look, you do 50 interviews, you're going to be tired. I don't care who you are, from Denzel Washington to Angelina Jolie to someone else. You just have a certain limit where you do, you know, get tired. But I think hopefully they'll break it up and you'll have a little break in between. But, you know, oftentimes I would encourage that, you know, if you are finding that you're running up against the wall, just say, you know, hey, can I have a break for a second? Talk to your publicist or talk to the manager, whoever's on set, and just say, you know, I just need to take a breather, even if it's just to take 5 minutes and have coffee. Much better to do that and kind of recalibrate and then dive right in again than try to forge through 5 hours with no break.
And this situation we're talking about here is what's known as a press junket, right? When all the journalists are at a hotel or a location, and you guys are ready to interview the stars one after the other after the other. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, but also red carpet.
Okay.
Red carpet premieres, where you have, you know, 25 outlets all lined up along the step and repeat to speak with you. And I'm pretty much sure, I'm guaranteeing you that some of those people are going to ask you the same question. So it's not just a press junket, it's also on the red carpet premiere lines.
So what can an actor do to make your life easy? What can an actor do to make your life easier? If they're on the red carpet and you're there with a microphone, is there some things that, you know, people do to make your life easy?
I like humor. You know, I'll give you a really good example, but he's been in the business forever, so I don't know if this is a great example. So Denzel Washington right now is promoting Gladiator 2.
Yeah.
I don't know
He's
if
a
you've
bit
seen him.
experienced, isn't it? He's
Yeah,
experienced.
Yeah.
he's very experienced. But let me tell you what he did. He had two separate interviews. One was a live morning show on Good Morning America, and the other one was just a Los Angeles premiere. Now, on the morning show, I thought was hilarious. They had like four of the presenters or anchors interviewing him. Before they started, one was a little bit late to the scene, and he knew this guy, and so he took his paperwork and started to pretend like he was going to be the anchor. So when the guy walks in, he goes, "Oh, I don't know if they told you the news, you know." And he goes, "What news?" He goes, "Should I tell him?" And he's playing around like, cuts have been made, and you didn't make the cut. So
Oh my gosh.
he was just joking around with them, and that really set the scene. Everybody's laughing, they're in a great mood, and now they're raring to go. But he jumped right in and decided to deal with him with humor. He did the same thing for the Los Angeles premiere. He recognized two actors that he knew that were walking kind of like around the side that were trying to go into the theater to see the film. And he took the microphone from the presenter on the carpet that was interviewing him and walked over and started to interview other actors that were coming to see him. And it was just,
Oh my
hilarious.
gosh.
So
That's brilliant.
yeah, it's brilliant, but just doing something off the cuff like that, turning the tables on them, doing something funny will always help to lighten a situation. And it makes you forget how long you've been there and what you're doing. People love that.
Right, right. And then even actors like doing their first red carpet, you'll really notice the difference, I'm sure, right? When they're doing one of their first interviews, they don't know when to start. They may be standing in the wrong way. What are those kind of things that happen?
Yeah, they're pretty nervous. But before the reporters along the red carpet, before they even roll the camera with their camera guy or their producer, they'll kind of put you in the right light. So you don't have to worry about that. If you're standing in a wrong angle and they want to move you over, or maybe it's just so crowded, like the Oscars red carpet or something, they'll definitely move you in the right angle. So no worries about that. And also too, another thing I would add is be as succinct as you can, because I've had that really when I was starting back in the day, where you'll ask an actor a question and they'll go on and on and on about something. And then you get the publicist saying, wrap it up, wrap it up, wrap it up, because you've got like 10 other people to interview as well. So the quicker, the better. I always find quick answers are much better, unless you know the person. You know what I mean? You've got some kind of a formality going, not formality, but just kind of a fun kind of tongue in cheek thing going, then you can go on. But if you don't, and you're kind of just going on a step repeat, and you've got like one person, the second person, the third person, quick and succinct is always better.
I think the issue that comes across with that, I know when I've been on a red carpet, sometimes I think I'm being too boring if I'm too short. And then in other circumstances, I'm sort of waiting for the interjection. But you guys will be leaving some gap for the edit, I'm sure, right? So
Yeah,
how do we navigate that by
I
wanting
think
to continue the question like I am now because of the gap?
know what you want to say before you go on the carpet, because there are times where people will show up on the carpet and you can tell they haven't really prepared, and they're kind of meandering and they're thinking about it and they're kind of looking up, and it's like, that doesn't make for great television, obviously. So
Yeah.
kind of know what your points are that you want to hit. And even if they ask you a question is similar, just go straight to your answer, and make sure you get the things across that you want to. You're there to promote your project. You may have another project coming up. Make sure you want to get that in, but make sure you have at least 3 points that you want to get across on that carpet with all the people that you're talking to, and make sure you've practiced it and get right to it.
That's such a good insight. I haven't thought about it in that way of like coming up with a predetermined thing that you think about it being responsive. I don't know what their question will be, but you can literally craft it back to how you want.
I think politicians do that, don't they? I feel like they do.
Well,
Certainly,
They absolutely do.
They do it all the time. But you also know there's going to be those curveball questions. I remember once, I don't know if it was Hugh Jackman. Remember, it was one of the Hughs that I was, or maybe it was the other Hugh. It was one of the Hughs I was interviewing on a red carpet. And he just came up to me, and before I could even ask the first question, he's like, "Oh, you got your eyeshadow to match your dress. I love that color scheme on you." And it threw me. Because I was not expecting him to make a comment on my looks at all. So I had to kind of gather myself and then say, okay. And then we got right into the topic. But, sometimes they can have something to say about you. So
that's
you
nice.
never
And
know.
I suppose you choose, don't you, what you want to use. If you've seen 10 people, am I right in thinking that you wouldn't be able to necessarily use all those 10 interviews? So you're going to pick the best story and the best person that fits,
Yeah.
right?
Here's the thing, and they probably haven't told you this, but it depends on what the project is. If you are doing a project with undeniable A-lister that's leading. Everybody is going to want that A-lister. That's just the bottom line. It's like we want Paul Mescal and we want Denzel Washington for Gladiator 2.
Yeah.
You know, and then everybody else, if you were like, 17th down on the call list, maybe we'll use you. But most outlets, whether they're digital, whether they're television, even radio, they are always going to want the lead actor in this project first. And then they can bring somebody else into it. And a lot of times, if you're farther down on the list, if you want to make sure that your sound is used or your interview is used, say something interesting about the lead actor that we don't already know.
Nice
That's one way
tip.
to get into it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh,
Say,
the secrets are coming. I love it.
If you were in Gladiator, Darren, but you didn't have a big role.
I'm definitely not in Gladiator.
Yeah. You may have said one line like, "Get him."
Yeah.
That was it. But they invited you because you were on a call sheet and you were actually in the film. They probably aren't going to do a major interview with you and probably aren't going to use it. But if you want to make sure they use it, I would go in there and say, it's my first time being on a set like that. And man, I learned so much from Denzel Washington. You wouldn't believe. You're talking about the A-lister. You're talking about the man who owns the film. And let me tell you something. When you're saying something great about an A-lister who's leading the film, you're more likely to get into it.
Nice.
Be used for sure.
So Paul Mescal is looking really buff, and oh my God, I've never seen him looking so big. And
right,
it makes your cut easier, right?
Right. If you were
authentic, small, like you said before as well. Yeah.
Yeah. If you were a small character, let's just say in with Angelina's new film Maria on Netflix, and you just had you were a member in like the bar she was in or something, and maybe you were the bartender because there was a bartender in there who said very little. And they recognized him, but he's not a well-known guy. He's maybe an Italian actor. A lot of people don't know him. A way to get in is say, I did that scene alone with Angelina, and I was so nervous, but I learned so much from her. She was gracious. That's another way to get you in.
Great tips. Thank you. Is there anything that an inexperienced actor can say that is not right or that will get your back up?
They would get what? I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
That would get your back up as a reporter. Is there ways that actors behave that is not nice for you?
I think that every entertainment reporter in Hollywood that has been doing this for more than a decade, like I have their favorite and their not so favorite. Have had interactions with maybe actors that have been very kind, and then maybe actors that have not. It all just really depends. And sometimes some of the big ones that you think would not be kind are the kindest people. And some of the ones that are maybe B-list or slightly falling off the A-list are the ones that are difficult.
You hear that a lot. Certainly my own personal experience, all the most famous people I've met have been great. Yours, Rich?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the higher up the list, if we're talking about the A-list, whatever, the people at the top and that have been doing it a long time, especially those people, they know how to handle a conversation. They know how to handle the right situation and know how to speak to people. And that charismatic energy comes across. Even if you're just having a one-to-one over breakfast, you'd be like, oh, this person is great. I know why they're a star. I know they're prepared, they're friendly, not over-friendly. Right. In my experience. And then some other people maybe, like you say, lower down the call sheet, maybe not so.
Yeah. And sometimes,
but vice versa, as well. I've
had one or two A-listers over time. There's been so many over the years that have just been more serious. I wouldn't say they're difficult, but they don't really have patience for your basic questions, kind of like, what do you think of the weather type questions? They want you to ask them a question that no one's asked them and to show that you really have done your research, not only on them, but on the film and on the director, and really understand the trajectory of their career. And if you don't ask the right questions, they can give you really short answers and be annoyed. So yeah, some people you just really got to do your research, but as a reporter, you should be doing your research anyway.
Talking of research, you've got a book behind you. Tell us about that.
Yeah, you do.
That's just the story of Hollywood. Well, first of all, I'm just obsessed with Hollywood. So I'm always interested in like the history of Hollywood, how certain actors came to be about, how certain studios came to be about. So that's just more of a history book there. But you know me, I'm always loving Hollywood.
How do you think it's changed over the last few years? Because I feel like it's changed.
Oh yeah. The first thing I would say that's made it change, and you might agree with me, Darren, social media.
Right.
I mean, I think almost 20 years ago when I first really started getting into entertainment, social media was just coming on the scene. It wasn't really required. People kind of didn't know, like, what is Twitter and what do you do with it? And, it's kind of like an optional thing. Now it's mandatory. And I'll tell you another thing that's very interesting. Although I haven't done the carpet in a while, but a colleague of mine was telling me the other day, I said, "Oh, I saw you on the carpet. You were further down." And he goes, yeah, he worked at CNN as a freelancer. I used to work at CNN. That's how we know each other. And he said, yeah, we're farther down on the step and repeat now because of social media influencers. I go, what? He goes, yes. Right. Back in the day, it kind of was this was the way it was on red carpet lines in Hollywood, especially for major movies or even major TV shows. It was pretty much Entertainment Tonight, Access Hollywood, and Extra.
Explain what you mean by down the line for someone who's not au fait with how a red carpet might work.
So like basically you line up as a reporter, right? So you have your step and repeat. Well, who's the first reporter that you talk to? It's got to be the number one show. It's usually going to be Entertainment Tonight. Okay, who's the second show that you talk to? It's usually Extra or Access Hollywood. So it goes in order of importance. That's
like
the way it used to be.
Call sheet. Yeah.
Right. Yes. And so then after that, you may get your digital or your online, like Associated Press or Entertainment Weekly. Now, what I'm seeing is you're seeing social media influencers with a huge following right up at the top of the line, the step and repeat. Like maybe
as interviewers, like the social media person is
right.
Like,
and
like the host.
You never saw YouTubers anywhere near the front of the line on the red carpet to interview A-list celebrities. Never. And now you do. If you're somebody on YouTube and you like reviewing movies and you have a following now, and now all of a sudden you have, let's say, maybe 4 or 5 million people following you, and all you do is talk about Marvel films, or all you do is talk about dramatic films or animated films, that's all you do, and you've got like 4 to maybe 7 million followers, you're going to be able to interview the A-listers of those films pretty early on when it comes to the red carpet premieres. You're going to be right at the top. And when I say at the top, I mean like the minute that the celebrities get out of the limos, you're probably going to be the second or third person that they are speaking with.
I noticed that at Cannes Film Festival, they used to hate social media, and now TikTok sponsors Cannes, and the social media stars are walking the red carpet. They're on the red carpet interviewing. If you are a social media star with a big following and you want to interview on the red carpet, how do you even get there? How do you get?
You don't even have to ask. I mean, it's funny. I can't remember the young lady's name, but she was flown in. I think her following is like 7 million. And her and her boyfriend just do a lot of zany things and they're interesting, but she's got like a 7 million follower count on Instagram alone. I don't know about her Twitter and her TikTok, so I'm sure it's more than that. They flew her in to Tom Cruise's Mission Impossible, the latest installation last year. She was able to interview him right on the red carpet in Rome. Wow. Now, I talked to a lot of people and very few people. I think I only know 1 or 2 people here in Hollywood as reporters, entertainment reporters, that were actually flown into Rome to be there for the movie's premiere.
We actually spoke to someone who does this. Yeah, Amber Doig-Thorne, who was one of our earlier interviews, actually. Yeah. She started out doing YouTube quite early on in the sort of YouTube scope. And she started for fun, interviewing people for movies. And she's been flown all around the world. She talks about it actually on one of our episodes. Have a look back if you are online or if you've got access to that. Amber Doig-Thorne, yeah. And she has interviewed A-listers, all around the world and been flown in to do that. So it is interesting.
And that was back when she didn't even have that many followers on YouTube, right? But it's a lot compared. Yeah. But Rich, you did a movie where they flew out social media stars to do like a behind the scenes thing with you, didn't you?
Yeah, I did actually. I was working in Budapest on a film, and they actually had, it was probably, I don't know how much I can say really, but they had a number of very large buses filled with YouTubers. They were all sorts. They were social media stars, really. They had their own following, and they were hand-picked because each one, you knew that they were from different markets and they had different interests, but they were generally massive followings on one of the big networks. Like someone was doing YouTube and they had millions of subscribers, and someone else was on TikTok and they had million, and each one actually, very interestingly, did their own thing. One of the guys I remember was like, we're outside the sort of studio and we were going to go in for a tour of the studio and to do round tables and meet everyone. And they were like, they're doing their dances and they're getting all the other YouTubers and the other TikTokers to be in their dance so they can tag them and share them on their stories. Cross-pollinating, I suppose, all of their and they spent, I know that they spent a lot of money on getting them their first class flights. They spent a lot of money on busing them 5-star accommodation, and then the experience of the day, a lot of money on the experiences that they had. It was a very expensive day, but I imagine very productive for the publicity.
And was that content for when the movie came out so they could promote it, and was it embargoed until then?
Yes, I was on it because I was on one of the buses. Each of the buses had a cast member, basically, that kind of was like a member. And so they took our phones off us. Actually, not mine, because they said, well, you can't post anyway. But they took all the phones off of all the YouTubers, and they gave them whatever phone they had. They gave them one, exactly the same. So it would work with Android or iPhone. And they could film whatever they wanted on that phone, but they had to give it back to production at the end. So that's why a lot of them were doing it, I think, outside the studio before they gave their phone back. They were doing their TikToks outside and their dances and things like that. And then they went inside and filmed all day.
I was going to say, not to cut you off, they also have teams. Most of the people who have like the 7 million followers, first of all, they have agents. And there are social media agencies, just like you have a talent agency for actors that do nothing but represent social media stars. And usually by the time you have an agent that just specializes in representing social media stars, you also have a team that is editing and cutting your stuff and even coming up with creative ideas. So they may send you to cover Tom Cruise's, latest Mission Impossible installation in Rome. And you and your boyfriend are there shooting it on your iPhone, but then you're just going back to your hotel room and sending it to your team in LA or New York. And then they're cutting it together and posting it for you. So you don't have to do everything.
That's kind of what we're doing with this. This is going to go off into the production team, and it's going to magically appear on Spotify.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how that's grown, actually. Yeah.
I mean, it's a thing. Are you thinking of changing your career to be more digital then, or are you going to be a traditional red carpet host for traditional media?
It's so funny. People still see me as a red carpet host because I worked at CNN for a decade. And I was, in fact, my avatar on Twitter was Red Carpet KJ. For so long. But then when I stopped working there, I kind of got away from that. And so now I'm just more of a broadcast journalist because I am a member of the Golden Globes, and I'm part of the African American Film Critics Association. I'm part of the Hollywood Creative Association, and I'm also a producer. My position, I think, has just evolved. So my social media, I'm pretty much on all the social media platforms. I neglect TikTok. I'll definitely let you know, just because it's a lot of work. My main thing that I love is Instagram. I love Instagram, lots of reels, lots of posting that stuff. I'm not a social media star just because I obviously have come from the background of journalism. I went to college at UCLA. I went to New York University and got my master's degree in journalism. So I came up from that kind of arena, where you really just, if you wanted to be a journalist, you studied the craft, you got out there in the field, you went to a smaller market, or you went to school to learn how to write, learn how to be a broadcast person. So I'm more from that. But I think for me, if I look kind of into the future, I am much more interested now in moving kind of back into the producing side, because I've always been on camera for radio and television, but also producing television unscripted stuff.
Talking about production, you mentioned the Golden Globes there as well. Am I right in thinking that you've been involved in the television specials for the Golden Globes and the Oscars? Tell us about that.
I'm trying to think of how many of us are there now. I think there's more than 200 that vote, but basically I'm one of the people that vote for the Golden Globe nominations, and then we vote on the winner. So we basically come up every year and we have to see a lot of content. When I say a lot, Darren will tell you, he knows. I am watching so much content, your eyeballs would roll. Everything on television, every movie that comes in, international films, everything. So that kind of at the end of the year, we go in and kind of decide, who should even be nominated. And then after that, choose a winner. So it's a lot of content that we're seeing, and not just for the Golden Globes, also as a member for the African American Film Critics Association and a member of the Hollywood Creative Alliance, we're also doing the same thing. We're picking actors and actresses that were in television shows, dramas, comedies, musicals, and also films. So it's a lot of content to see all the time. But also, before I was really just a member of any of all those organizations, I also was producing a lot of stuff that aired on CNN, specials with entertainment stars, Tina Fey and Amy Poehler, and putting stuff on TV. And I so missed that part of coming up with really good ideas for TV shows and watching it be executed from beginning to end, coming up with an idea, shooting the video, doing the voiceover, putting it all together with the editor. I like that part. And I kind of want to definitely start incorporating more of that into kind of what I'm doing in the future.
If you'd like to join the We Audition community, go to weaudition.com/show to get 25% off. Now, back to the show.
And is there going to be a theme of those shows? I remember you mentioned to me you really like the true crime genre before, right?
I am so addicted. I don't even say that to my friends because they just go, "Oh, don't get her started."
People get addicted to true crime.
Don't get her started on true crime. But yeah, I definitely like the unscripted world. I love a lot of the docuseries that you may see on Hulu or
I'm a big
HBO
fan
Max, or definitely on Netflix and stuff. Love stuff like that. I like the documentaries where it can get it done in 1 hour. But the one I watched that was scripted, I'm sure you guys have seen it. Everyone's been talking about the Menendez brothers.
Yeah.
Everyone's been talking about that. So they had
do you mean the Reconstruction one with Javier Bardem in it?
Well, they have two. Netflix did one that was scripted where they had Javier Bardem and Chloe Sevigny, and they basically had it in I think a 6 or 7 part series episode that was, dramatic, and they acted it out. And then they also did a 2-hour documentary about the real case. So they have two things going on.
Right. That was a bit like when they did the OJ one a few years ago.
Yes.
I was so fascinated. I watched them side by side. But what I love about documentaries as an actor is if you watch a documentary instead of scripted television from an acting perspective, you're seeing real life unfold. And that's so, it's so useful for an actor to watch that.
Well, also too, I don't know if you noticed that, you guys being actors, a lot of the docuseries that are, I want to say scripted, ones that you see out there now, they come from podcasts. You look at something like Dr. Death. Dr. Death was a podcast. Dirty John, one of the most downloaded podcasts, true crime ever, was a podcast first. And then they turned it into a series. So a lot of talent agencies, a lot of actors, a lot of production companies look to these true crime podcasts and see what can we, either a book, turn into a documentary, or a podcast and turn that into a docuseries. But most of the docuseries that you see out there now, even documentaries, I can assure you they were a book first or a podcast.
Or a news article, I think, as well.
I feel like it's a lot of things.
Yeah, I did a podcast series a few years ago called Law for Amazon. And it was like a haunted kind of true crime from the past.
Oh, okay.
So it was stories that had some kind of scary, supernatural, unexplained element from years and years ago. And mine was set in like 1600.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. They did a scripted version of the podcast. Right. It's very interesting.
Yeah. Right. That's the same thing. I don't know if you've seen the actor Glenn Powell in the Netflix series, a Netflix movie called Hitman. That was an article in Texas Monthly, I believe.
Texas Monthly, yeah.
It was an article, and they turned it into a film.
That's Richard Linklater, isn't it?
Yes.
Is it?
Yeah.
Do you think we're running out of ideas? Because everything always needs an IP of something. It always needs to be linked back to the main. Everything always needs to be linked nowadays.
I don't know if we're running out of ideas. I just think that the public's interest is very high when it comes to true crime. And so as long as you have the public's interest, really interested in stuff like that. I mean, look at Court TV. That's a network that's dedicated to nothing but covering trials and crimes. Look at Dateline. Look at 48 Hours. Those are all shows that get really high ratings or viewership. People are looking at that saying, okay, if they're interested in the Menendez brothers, if they're interested in John Benet Ramsey, even though this crime took place like 20 some years ago, then naturally Hollywood is saying, okay, what can we do with that? It's like anything else. Think of something that's on TV and it's a hit show. It hasn't been done before. And then the other networks say, well, we want our version. And what do? They come out and try to copycat it. Hollywood's always been like that.
Yeah.
That happens a lot.
Existing IP, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think if anyone's coming up with an idea for a feature film or something like that, it needs to be based on some sort of IP that can be used in its publicity, something to talk about, something that people can hang their hat on. Because otherwise, what are you trying to sell? And certainly for a feature film nowadays, it'd be very difficult to sell. What do you talk about? Where does it fit in a market? But if it is based on a true life story that everyone knows, you've automatically got. I did something recently at the beginning of this year that was a massive story. So when the TV series comes out, it'll be a drama, but everyone will know what it's about. Everyone will automatically know. They'll be, oh yeah, I know.
Yeah, they call that pre-awareness, and it's
sometimes I like the stories actually. I like the stories that are true that you haven't heard anything about. You were like, what?
Oh,
yeah.
There's a person behind that? I was looking at something the other day on Court TV. I can't remember what case it was, but it was about a Mormon mother that has been charged. And actually, she's in jail right now awaiting trial with orchestrating a hit on her ex-husband who actually was murdered. So they arrested her new husband, and the hitman. And now the state is in Florida. Now the state is trying to secure the death penalty for her. If that happens and she's found guilty, she would really be, I don't even think there's been any other Mormon mothers, sent to the death chamber at all in Florida. It's such an intriguing case. And everyone in Florida has been watching it. Some people across the nation, but if they ever turn that into, something scripted.
Do you think there's more empathy because it's real? You're like, you've first got the story, but then, oh my God, it's real. These people exist.
It's funny you mentioned that. I went to a convention called Crime Con earlier in the year. I think it was around May, and it happened in Nashville. And one of the things they talked about was how can they start telling more stories from the victim's perspective and not make true crime series or docuseries exploitative. And so that is something that people are talking about, not just throwing it out there for the masses to watch, but understanding that there are so many real lives and families that have been affected by that. So people are definitely trying to understand how you can tell a story like that and tell it from the victim's perspective and not glamorize the actions of the perpetrator.
Right, because then it becomes a bit like Breaking Bad, where we should hate Bryan Cranston's character, but we still want him to win.
Right.
Somehow. Randomly,
It's not about the people that are doing killing. It's about the people who were affected and all the loss that happened to the families or the person that, lost their lives.
Have you ever interviewed Bryan Cranston?
I don't remember interviewing him. It's been a while. I remember when Breaking Bad was winning like everything.
Yeah.
And he was like really big, but I'm sure I might have on a red carpet, but I don't remember it. Not recently in the last couple of years.
Because he's one of those guys that comes out with these sound bites, as you were talking about earlier.
Yes.
He has these little nuggets that go viral.
Yeah, he did that. I think with Chris. It was a reporter. He used to work for Fox, and then he moved over to like CNN and did something for HBO. And they had a one-on-one, and he was saying some stuff about Trump, and I was like, whoa. Yeah, he said stuff that you definitely remember for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're an actor that's been on one of those red carpets and you've said one of these great sound bites, but you don't see it anyway, you don't hear about it, is there a way that they can get that clip? Let's say your outlet didn't use it, but we know you filmed it. Is there a way we can get that?
Probably not, because if it's a big outlet, like a big network, like an ABC, NBC, CNN, or even a big show like I want to say Entertainment Tonight or Access Hollywood, they will save everything. Don't get me wrong. They save everything because you never know when
someone gets famous and then dies.
Is going to move into an A-list actor. So they always save everything. But if they absolutely don't use it and it's just saved in their file, I don't think they normally would just cut something for an actor and send it to them. That's not something that normally happens.
I actually worked for a news agency, my only proper job. And we used to film some stuff for German television. It was a brilliant job. I loved it. And we did do some interview stuff, and we generally just logged it, put it on the system, and we put the name of the person and we logged it, and we didn't use it. We were sort of waiting, what you said, KJ, waiting for the star to come along. And then you sort of bank some in case you don't get the star. This was a long time ago. But I can imagine that those just sit on a drive somewhere nowadays. But they're indexed.
Well, they do that also for, I don't know if you've ever seen when somebody passes away and then you see they've got this 2 to 3 minute story and you're like, wow, that was like literally just announced they were dead. How did they get this voiceover? How did they get this video? They usually will have an in memoriam or an obit, so to speak, written poised, ready to go, especially if an actor is sick, if an actor is getting elderly, if an actor is over the age of 80, then they know, they haven't really done anything lately and they may have been ill and in and out and you've heard certain things about them. They'll have something like that probably ready to go.
Wow. I reckon AI is going to do that in the future. You'll just pop it into ChatGPT. This person just died. Here's their obit. Run with that.
The thing about television, it's going to be interesting how AI would kind of be used is that I think about that, but then I think about someone like James Earl Jones, who passed away, I think earlier this year. And he was the voice of CNN. He was the voice of Star Wars, Darth Vader. Yeah. Everyone knows him. I, along with my colleague, got a chance to interview him at the Screen Actors Guild a couple of years back. And he was such a nice gentleman. And off camera, we were joking with him about, can you say, this is CNN or something? And he's like, for free? We died laughing. It wasn't recorded. We were just talking to him as they were setting up the cameras. But it's stories like that.
He knows his
that
value.
We would love to tell the audience, if and when someone passes away. That kind of stuff is very colorful that people laugh at and love. I don't know how AI regenerates that.
We could, get that nuance. That's something in the memory bank, isn't it? That you might
a
never
lot of
written
times
down.
the stuff that happens when you're preparing for the interview, when your camera guy is setting up the camera and testing the audio, and you're just having a conversation with them, or after the interview, and they're like, "Oh, what are you doing next?" And you're just sitting around chit-chatting with them, and you're learning stuff. That kind of nuance is not something that I see AI reduplicating. They're more just kind of factory. They were born here. They died here. They were in this film. This is a speech they said when they received their 35th award or their 12th award or something like that. But it doesn't add that color to it.
And I suppose you're building up a rapport. When you're doing that for 10 years, you said you were doing that reporting, you're going to be seeing the same stars coming in again and again. Do they know you and like, oh, KJ, and they'll miss out a few people and come straight to you? Does that happen?
Some of them do if you're with a big outlet or a big organization. They know you if you're with the Golden Globes, obviously, if you've been with the Golden Globes for a long time, or they know you if you were at CNN or Entertainment Tonight and you've been with those outlets or those organizations for a long time. Yes, they'll know you. They'll remember your face and stuff for sure, especially if they're seeing you a lot around award season for the same film. They know. Yeah.
And then you get that. I have a friend that's a pretty famous actor, and he says that it's got to a point now where even just the red carpet photographers, he's like, I've got my two people that I like. I know they will always put nice pictures out of me. And I know these other junk outlets don't. So he said, I'll ignore all of them. I'll give these two the shot. I'll do the look there, the wink there, and that's it. And he says he does two. Of course, if he's walking a red carpet, there can be 1,000 camera flashes. But he says he specifically gives the two people he knows and trusts the shot, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And I mean, he said it's like an unwritten transaction. He's like, I'm giving you the best picture of me on the red carpet, and I know you're not going to screw me over with that.
Yeah, I mean, some
take
of
the
them
picture of me yawning or eating my canapé or something.
Yeah, some of them have their favorites, but a lot of especially when it comes to women actresses, you're not going to see them yawning. You're not going to see them eating. The ones that are on camera, they don't take bad pictures. You look at it like a J-Lo. The minute she steps out of her limousine, she's posing. And she's ready. I mean, I just saw her this weekend. I
saw it on
your Instagram. It's very
I just saw, literally, actually yesterday, we were at an event where she was there with the actors and the cast of, I haven't posted that yet, but the actors of Unstoppable. But she just doesn't take a bad picture. I mean, Beyonce as well. They know how to pose and they know what's going on. So
that picture on your Instagram, did she take that selfie or did you take it? This one?
She took it.
That's AI.
I mean, that's a great shot.
Much better.
Yeah. That's not J-Lo. It's her younger sister.
Yeah.
For sure. She knows what she's doing. For sure.
She knows what she's doing.
I actually went to the screening of her documentary and she was, there. She was actually sat in front of me for the Q&A afterwards. And that's what that whole documentary is about. She's a professional and she's focused and she's on it and doesn't care if things go wrong. She just picks it up and carries on, and that bleeds through into all of this press.
We've heard that
a
lot, actually. We've heard that through a few people we've chatted to, and a few people that we see coming to our events, and a few people on our system. That professionalism is important, and it shows. Do you've seen hundreds of people, hundreds of A-list stars all the way down. Do you think you know what a star is? Can you see it?
Before they are as well. Wow.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned earlier, sometimes these C-listers become A-listers. Do you go, I knew they would? Or do you think you're ever surprised by it?
There are a few people who I've interviewed and I said, wow, they should be bigger already because they did tremendous work in this film. And if they just stick with it, they'll probably get there. I think for me, I look at the choices they make. If they're in one really good film and then they're in another really great film and then they don't do too many films in between, I know that they're selective and I know that they're choicey. And I think, okay, if you're selective and you're choicey, you're going to get somewhere for sure.
And most actors don't feel like they have that luxury at the start, though.
Oh, absolutely.
Not at the start.
Got to take all the jobs they can, right?
Yeah, but once they get that one where they get to be a breakout star, from that point on, that's when you start making better decisions. Like, for instance, in Unstoppable, it's about this athlete. It's a true story, actually. That's the one that J-Lo's in. It's about an athlete that was born without one leg, but he became one of the greatest wrestlers around. It's wonderful biopic. And the guy who plays the athlete with one leg, his name is Jarrell Jerome. He's an actor. He burst on the scene when he was in Ava DuVernay's When They See Us, about the Central Park Five. Yeah. He did a phenomenal job in that. And then in this movie, he also does a phenomenal job. And so I talked to him about, and he said, yes, I've been selective, and like the type of roles that I take and what I'm doing. It's just really about choices that you make. And so I think that he's probably on a trajectory to do a lot better. This film, he really gets to kind of bend his acting muscles or flex his acting muscles, so to speak. And I think he did a great job in it.
Now, you met him during this film. Did you meet him before that or not?
I didn't get to talk to him. I think it was for When They See Us. I didn't get to talk to him about that for the cast, but I remember listening to them when they won some awards backstage, and he just seemed to be very focused.
Right.
Talking about timings. Sorry, Dan. So talking about timings, if you're on a red carpet and you're there for Gladiator, have you already seen Gladiator?
Most of the time, yes.
How does that work? Because it's a premiere. That's the first time it's shown, isn't it? Or is it?
No. As journalists, whenever you're a member of an organization, they send you screeners or they have media screenings. And that's where you have an opportunity to see the film before it's out and before it premieres. And so because journalists are all over the world, they have different screenings all over the world. Sometimes it's come to a media screening at this particular studio lot. Sometimes it's, if you have access to a certain app for journalists called the Indie Screener or maybe Golden Globes app, or maybe the studio has their own app called FYC, Warner Brothers or FYC Sony or something like that. You go on there, they give you a password or a passcode and you can watch it. So now there's so many different ways of seeing stuff, not just on your streamer. It could be through a link. It could be through an app. It could be a media screening where it's just for media and journalists that are here locally, New York or Los Angeles. So you get a chance to see something before it's put out there to the world.
And do you hit the after parties afterwards, or did they not let you do that?
Sometimes, not all the time, not always invited to the after parties, but sometimes it just depends on what studio it is, what streaming partner is. But sometimes I do. I was at the Gladiator when it was fun. It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
But was that
I think the last one I went to
Hollywood
before
in the Chinese theater, right? They built a big Gladiator.
Oh, is that Chinese theater?
No, it was at the premiere was at
Sunset,
the TCL, the Chinese theater, but the after party was at the Roosevelt Hotel.
We saw it. We went past it. It was all built up. Looked like the front of a.
They had excellent food,
Coliseum.
photography. Lots of people showed up. I think Snoop Dogg was there. The cast was there. Yeah. It was nice.
And they took over the whole Roosevelt Hotel, I'm assuming, right?
I think it was like the first floor ballroom, but it was huge.
Yeah.
It was huge. Yeah, lots of people showed up.
So if someone's there at that party and they meet you by the hors d'oeuvres stand having a chicken sandwich, right? And we get chatting.
Why does it have to be a chicken sandwich? Maybe
that's what I had last time I was at the Roosevelt. I had those mini chicken sliders.
I love it.
You know that from 25 degrees, right? I just remember this tray of mini chicken sliders coming around, and I'm having a conversation with you What's off the record, or is it all off the record if it's at the
You know what?
party?
Most of it is, a lot of times when I will see an actor away from the red carpet or away from the press junket, and we're just out there kind of shooting the breeze, just talking, it's just talking about them, how are you enjoying this press promotional tour? What did you think of the crowd? Just real easy questions. Nothing.
And what if I say, though, it's been great, but my co-star Richard, he's getting on my nerves.
Most people laugh.
Do I then have to be like, wait, don't print that. Don't print that.
No, they actually, lots of people joke. I've had so many actors when I go in to interview them and I say, was there anything challenging, taking on this role? And they said, yeah, I hated the director, hated the co-star, I hated the makeup person, I hated the hair person. It was like hilarious. I've seen people throw stuff out there like that and they're just kidding, most of the time just to make news or something. But most people never say anything negative about their coworkers. They just kind of stick with their character. Or if they do say something negative, they're just joking.
Yeah, right. But so you don't print that stuff if
they
meet you at the party. Yeah,
because most of the actors would never trust us to tell us that, and we know that. Like unless you're occasionally, I've seen, or maybe an A-list actor or something has had a really long sit-down interview with like a #1 publication, like maybe the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, or even BBC or something. And the interview is conducted over a series of days. And maybe it's over weeks. Maybe they talk to you the first week of October. And then they say, well, let's meet again the second week of October. And then the end of October, they have one more interview. So they've had like 3 different interviews over the series of a month. And during that time, they talk to you for hours and hours and hours. And so they may say something that may shock some people or say something that maybe was kind of off the cuff. In a situation like that, that's because, though, you've had hours and hours and hours with the person. But when you're just kind of meeting them at an after party, that's just for a few minutes. But when you're doing a sit down one-on-one interview and you're not just meeting them one time, you're meeting them 3 or 4 times for hours before you put this long piece together that are thousands and thousands of words, you're going to get something that's a little bit different.
Very interesting. Yeah. We're going to wrap this up, but as a final question, if you were on the red carpet on the other side, what's the question that you would like the interviewer to ask you?
I would love the interviewer to ask me, what's your passion project and who do you want to be in it? Because everybody talks about the past when you're on the carpet, the stuff that you've been in the past and your current project. But what I want them to ask me is, if I'm kind of an up and comer and I was in Gladiator 2 or in, Angelina's film Maria, what about the future now? What do you want to be in, and who are the actors you would love to work with? So what's that passion project?
That's a really good question, actually.
That allows me to open up to talk about the things I want to talk about and the projects. And maybe somebody watching says,
I'll do that.
I always saw her doing drama. She wants to do comedy? Okay. Interesting. Maybe we'll call her in and talk to her about that. It lets you get that out, because if all you've ever done is dramas, all people ever do is ask you about dramas. Maybe you want to do something more than that. And that gives you the opportunity to talk about what's headed for you in the future. What would you like to do? What is your passion project?
So KJ, to wrap this up, what is your passion project and what we're going to see you in the future?
Like I said, stand by, something unscripted, something that probably deals with true crime. And that's all I'm going to say about that. But that's where my heart lies, getting more into the production side now.
You heard it here first. Embargoed, Rich. Zip it up.
For sure. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's been great. Really appreciate you.
Thank you. I always love talking to you, Darren. It's been fun. You guys enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
And have a great award season. I'll see you on some of those red carpets, I hope.
Absolutely, Darren. Absolutely. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the We Audition show. Your hosts were Darren Darnborough and me, Richard Cambridge, from We Audition, the leading professional actors community where you can connect, learn, elevate your career, and always get a self-tape reader on demand. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're a We Audition member, or even if you're not, we would love it if you could please subscribe to this podcast, as it really helps us. And if you have friends who might get value from this episode, please share the link with them. You can find us at weaudition.com or for your iPhone or iPad by searching We Audition on the App Store. See you next time.